Okay. Now, the Sanskrit for this verse, Dr. Keith wrote it here on the whiteboard. And yes, okay, so this is Canto 2, Chapter 7, text 41. Na antam vidami aham ami munaya grajas te maya Velasya Pushasya Kuto Vara Ye Gayan Gunan Dasha Shatanana Adideva Shesho Dunapi Samavasyati Nasya Param Nantam Vidam Yaham Ami Munayo Grajaste
Nantam Vidam Yaham Ami Munayo Grajaste
Maya Balasya Purushasya Kuto Vara Ye
Maya Balasya Purushasya Kuto Balaye
Gayan Gunanda Shashatanana Adideva
Gayan Gunanda Shashatanana Adideva
Shesho Dunapi Samavasyati Nasya Param
Shesho Dunapi Samavasyati Nasya Param
Nantam Vidam Yahamami Munayo Grajaste
Nantam Vidam Yahamami Munayo Grajaste
Maya Balasya Purushasya Kuto Varab Ye
Maya Balasya Purushasya Kuto Balaye
Gayan Gunanda Shashata Nana Adi Deva
Gayan Gunanda Shasatana Adideva
Shesho Dunapi Samavasyati Nasya Param
Shesho Dunapi Samavasyati Nasya Param
Nantam Vidam Yaham Ami Munayo Grajaste
Nantam Vidam Yahamani Manayo Vajaste
Maya Balasya Purushasya Kuto Varaye
Maya Balasya Purushasya Kuto Balaye
Gayan Gunanda Shashatanana Adi Deva
Gayan Gunanda Shashatana Adideva
Shesho Dunapi Samavas Yati Nasya Param
Shesho Dunapi Samavasyati Nasya Param
Nantam
Vidam Yahamami Munayo Grajaste Maya Balasya Purushasya Kuto Varaye Gayan Gunanda Shasatana Adideva Shesho Dunapi Samavasyati Nasya Param
Nantam Vidami Ami Manaya Grajaste
Nantam Vidam Yahamami Munayo Grajaste
Maya Balasya Purushasya Kuto Varaye
Maya Balasya Purushasya Kuto Varaye
Gayan Gunanda Shasatana Adideva
Gayan Gunanda Shashatanana Adideva
Shesho Dunapi Samyavasyati nasya param.
Shesho dunapi samavasyati nasya param.
Nam tam vidam mahamami munayoga jaste.
Natam vidam yamami munayoga jaste.
Maya balasya purushasya kuto gagaye.
Maya balasya purushasya kuto varaye.
Yayam gunamya shasatana aditeva.
Gayam gunanda shasatanana adideva.
Sheshodunaki samavasyati nasya param.
Shesho dunapi samavasyati nasya param.
Nantam vidam mahami aminaya prajaste.
Nantam vidam yahamami munayo prajaste.
Maya balasya purushasya kuto varaye.
Maya balasya purushasya kuto varaye.
Dayan Gunanda Shasanana Adideva.
Gayam gunanda shasatanana adideva.
Shesho Dunapi Samayasha Dinasha Param.
Shesho dunapi samavasyati nasya param.
Natam Vedami Aham Amaya Gajaste.
Nantam vidam yahamami munayo prajaste.
Maya Balasya Purushasya Kutuvarite.
Maya balasya purushasya kuto varaye. Gayam gunanda shashatanana adideva. Shesho dunapi samavasyati nasya param. Would someone online like to recite the verse?
Nantam vidamya hamami munayoga jaste.
Nantam vidam yahamami munayo grajaste.
Maya balasya purusasya kuto varaye.
Maya balasya purushasya kuto varaye.
Gayan gunanda shasatanana adideva.
Gayam gunanda shasatanana adideva.
Shesho dunapi samavasyati nasya param.
Shesho dunapi samavasyati nasya param.
Nantam vidamya hamami munayo grajaste.
Nantam vidam yahamami munayo prajaste.
Aya balasya purushasya kuto varaye.
Maya balasya purushasya kuto varaye.
Ayam gunanda shasatanana adideva.
Gayam gunanda shasatanana adideva.
Shesho dunapi samavasyati nasya param.
Shesho dunapi samavasyati nasya param.
Nantam vidamya ami munayo grajaste.
Nantam vidam yahamami munayo prajaste.
Maya balasya purushasya kuto varaye.
Maya balasya purushasya kuto varaye.
Ayan gunanda shashatana adideva.
Gayam gunanda shasatanana adideva.
Yesho dunapi samavasyati nasya param.
Shesho Dunapi Samavasyati Nasya Param. Na, never, antam, end, vidami, do I know, aham, myself, ami, and all those, munaya, great sages, agraja, born prior to you, te, you, maya balasya, of the omnipotent, purushasya, of the personality of Godhead, kuta, what to speak of others, avara, born after us, yea, those, gayan, by singing, gunan, the qualities, dasha sata anana, one who has 10 faces, Adideva, the first incarnation of the Lord, Shesha, known as Shesha, Aduna, until now, Api, even, Samavasyati, can achieve, Na, not, Asya, of him, Param, limit. Translation. Neither I nor all the sages born before you know fully the omnipotent personality of Godhead. So what can others who were born after us know about him? Even the first incarnation of the Lord, namely Shesha, has not been able to reach the limit of such knowledge, although he is describing the qualities of the Lord with 10 faces. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The omnipotent personality of Godhead has primarily 3 potential manifestations, namely internal, external, and marginal potencies with unlimited expansions of these 3 energies. As such, the potential expansions can never be calculated by anyone because even the personality of God himself, as the incarnation of Shesha, cannot estimate the potencies, although he has been describing them continuously with his 1,000 faces. Om Ganatimirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Darati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapadakamalam Shri Guru and Vaisnavam Star Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishatan Vitam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshware Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpata Yubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Yevacha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Text 41, Chapter 7, Canto 2, Srimad Bhagavatam. Nantam Vidam Yaham Ami Munayo Grajaste Maya Balasya Pushasya Kuto Varaye Gayan Gunanda Shashatanana Adi Deva Shesho Dunapi Samavas Yatinasya Param. Neither I nor all the sages born before you know fully the omnipotent personality of Godhead. So what can others who were born after us know about him? Even the first incarnation of the Lord, namely Shesha, has not been able to reach the limit of such knowledge, although he is describing the qualities of the Lord with 1,000 faces. Hare Krishna. Okay. So, so Prabhupada says in the purport, the omnipotent personality of Godhead has primarily three potential manifestations, namely internal, external, and marginal potencies with unlimited expansion of these three energies. Okay, so I'm reading that, thinking like sometimes in our attempts at life, at knowledge, at spiritual life, sometimes it's natural and helpful to simplify, not make things simplistic. Simplistic means not recognizing the nuance and the complexity, but to simplify. So sometimes we can simplify, like, okay, there's spiritual energy and there's material energy, like that. And here, three, okay, spiritual energy, material energy, and then Tatastha Shakti. There's kind of like, there's the ocean, there's land, but then there's the beach. Okay, Tatastha Shakti, the Jiva soul, it's like the beach, so like three energies. And then sometimes it's helpful and necessary to enter into the complexity. Sometimes it's necessary to enter into the complexity. So Krishna says in the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Atava Bo 19, Kim Gatina Tavarjuna, Vista Bihamidam Kritsnam, Ekam Shenas Taturjigat. Because Krishna in the 10th chapter, he describes so many details about how we can realize him in matter. It's like amongst beasts, I am the lion, amongst bodies of water, I am the ocean, amongst immovable things, I am the Himalayas. And like that, I am all devouring death, Mityu Sarva Harashchaham. And throughout in the 7th chapter, Rasoham Apsukonte, I am the taste in water. Prabhasmi Sasisoya, I am the light of the sun and the moon. We can realize God in the light of the sun and the moon. I am the fragrance of the earth. I'm the sound and ether. Okay. So, but then at the end of that chapter, so Krishna says, but what need is there for all this detailed knowledge? But just like, it's really like a fragment of a portion of a small percentage. Just a fragment of myself, I pervade and support this entire universe. That fragment, that's the super soul. That's not even Krishna getting directly involved. The whole thing is okay. And so earlier in the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, one of what's called the Prabhupada calls it the nutshell, the seed verses of Bhagavad Gita, 10.8. Aham sarvasya prabhavo matasarvam pravartate iti mat bhavajanti Buddha bhava samanvita. So Krishna is describing, I am the source of all material and spiritual energies. And the wise people who get that, wise people who realize that, then they serve me with loving devotion. So sometimes, just like, let's just chant Hare Krishna, serve with love and devotion. Okay. And then sometimes we do want to, because, okay, like, so there's spiritual, marginal, and material energy. Material energy can be subdivided into 8 parts. Mir, Po, Nilo, Vayu, Kamana, Buddhir, Evacha, Ahankrami, Tiame, Bina, Prakriti, Ashtada, earth, water, fire, air, ether, and then the subtle material elements, mind, intelligence, false ego. Just like as an analogy, there's the hardware, then there's the software. So the software of the computer that represents the subtle material energies, mind, intelligence, and ahankara or false ego. We're not the hardware, we're not the software, we're the operator of the computer. Okay, and so so sometimes Krishna says one who knows me is to be understood as the knower of everything. And that's it. That's just know Krishna. At the same time, in that approach, there can be the risk of what's become commonly called like the spiritual bypass. this I think Keith mentioned this phrase a few days ago, right? The path to sainthood goes through adulthood. So it's just like anything, any problem you have, any problem I have, anything happening, and go, just chant Hare Krishna. And all right, well, okay, I mean, that could certainly be auspicious. Still, I want to point out, you broke another agreement with me. Oh, just chant Hare Krishna. Okay. Yeah, well, it's be a saint like me. Okay. So adulthood means things like being responsible or noticing with honest introspection, not at the expense of just serve God with love and devotion, but noticing like, okay, I can see I have this very toxic envy in my heart, and then I'm trying to hurt you. Of course, always for your own good. I just want you to understand some things, but I'm trying to bring you down. I'm trying to hurt you because I got some envy in my heart. And this pattern's been persisting only for about 45 years now. Whenever anyone tries to point it out, even lovingly, I go, just chant Hare Krishna. Okay, so that can be like a spiritual bypass, because the idea is this process of bhakti yoga, this process of God consciousness is very powerful. So powerful, one aspect of the power is that all the stuff comes up, like we're turning over rocks and like, oh, I didn't know that was crawling there. Like that, and stuff comes up, and then work like everything depends on us, pray like everything depends on God. And so part of our work is to that when things come up, because we're in the process of kirtan, studying Bhagavatam, if we're aware when we study Prabhupada's books, we should be kind of uncomfortable, like, ooh, yeah, oh, he's talking to me there. Ooh, okay. So yeah, so when stuff comes up, then we pull it and we don't beach ball it, we don't push it back down. So that's part of, and then right, so we want to be conscious. Are we doing spiritual bypass in the name of just in the name, well, I know this is God's plan, and like that, without looking at how did I practically set that up? How am I responsible for that? Yes, what sort of grungy, unhealthy emotions am I carrying to get some shadow payoff, to avoid responsibility? So we want to look at those things. Okay. At the same time, well, let's say to take it on the other side, that's Krishna says, what need is there for all this detailed knowledge? Sometimes there's a need, and that's why he gives it. There's so much complexity here, and sometimes it's time to reduce and simplify. Right? That just like, okay, let's say if we're cleaning a room, okay, I'm going to clean a room. I'm going to clean a house and clean the house. Okay, but before I start the cleaning process, before I start the cleaning process, I'm going to catalog each piece of dust and each clump of dirt and everything that's out of it. I want to catalog it so that I understand where it came from and what it's made of, and its chemical consistency, the chemical consistency of that old sandwich under the bed. I want to. No, it's important, or you could just say, David, just get the sandwich out of it, okay? It's not so important that you understand whether it came from August 23rd or July 25th. That's not of essential importance right here, okay? So yeah, I can't count the number of times. Some of you are familiar with like some of the Safito programs. I can't count the number of times I'm standing behind an ark and someone's processing through the self-defeating beliefs that lead to the low self-esteem, which is because of the way their parents treated them. And what I really want to say is, why don't you just chant Hare Krishna? Maybe you've been in that position too. Yeah. Okay. So so sometimes there is a time, let's just pierce through all of this and get to the eternal nature of the soul. So there's a time to expand and understand the subtlety, the complexity, and there's a time to simplify. Okay, there's an important distinction: simple and simplistic. Simple is a spiritual quality, and simple means that I'm realized and I'm fixed and I'm deep in eternal principles of conscious living, and I'm able to and I notice the complexity of life and relationships. Maybe some haven't noticed. Life in relationships is complex. Okay. Maybe some haven't noticed it. Yeah. I notice the complexity of relationship and all of the different shades and like that. And I'm responding to the complexity with simple realization of eternal truth, with simple realization of what it means to live purposefully and to support you to live purposefully. Simplistic can be a sort of like, well, I know that's God's plan, without looking at how I said, without looking at my response. Simplistic can mean like childish. Simple is childlike. Simplistic can be like, I'm just, all I see is black and white, good and bad. I'm not noticing the subtlety and complexity like that. Okay. And so, yeah, and then here, so in this verse, this section of Bhagavatam, we have Lord Brahma speaking to his son and disciple, Narada Muni, and he's talking. And the Lord Brahma, he's even smarter than us. He's managing like the entire 14 planetary systems, what's it, the width of the universe, some like 90 billion light years, and this is he's got this all handled. Okay. And we're like, oh, what's happening with my checkbook? Oh, okay. Like that. So he's managing a lot of, so, and he's saying like, so he's beyond super intelligent, and he's saying like, yeah, and I don't even get a fraction of what the Supreme Personality of Godhead is like. And so it's described in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, Ahamadir hi devanam maharshinam savarasha. So Krishna makes it clear. He goes, I'm the source of the demigods, including Shiva and Brahma. Like it's described, Brahma Yesha Jagananda Vidana Karta. But Brahma, this whole management of the universe, it's all for the pleasure of Krishna. Vaishnavanam Yata Sambhu. Shiva, how, because there's Shiva worships. Shiva, honoring Shiva has become more and more popular, right? Whatever, like when I was born in 1960 in the West, who ever heard of Shiva? But now lots of people have heard of Shiva. Even like corporate businessmen will do a puja to Shiva. So Shiva, if you actually read about Shiva, not just something that's on the internet, but from authorized sources, Shiva he's the greatest devotee of Krishna. Vaishnavanam, he's the greatest devotee of Vishnu. So Krishna says, so Bhagavad Gita describes that Krishna, he's not another demigod, sage, prophet, avatar. He's Ete Jamsakla Pumsa, Krishna's to Bhagavan. He's the source of all. He's the source of the demigods and the sages, including Vishnu, Shiva, Brahma, like that. And so it's described that, you know, those that so Brahma's saying that his intelligence doesn't have the capacity to conceive even a drop of the qualities of the inconceivability of Krishna, Govinda, Mani, Purusham, Tamaham, Bhajam. So it means that in this process of gathering knowledge, it's helpful to recognize the reality that my senses and mind are limited. My senses we have a very limited sphere, even in terms of like light waves or sound waves. Right? On the frequency spectrum, we have a very limited sphere. right? Our senses and mind, not that our senses and mind are useless. That's an epistemology called pratyaksha and anumana, with our senses, mind, intelligence, the inferential process, the process of direct experience. We can get some knowledge, right? But it's limited. We all have a propensity to cheat. Like, okay, like if I'm giving the impression of the situation, I'm going to want to highlight my strengths and good qualities, and my my weaknesses and frailties and rather dark qualities. They're obviously not so important, but your faults, let's magnify them. Okay. Now we might say, no, I want my weak qualities to be okay, but that's really about shining light on how humble I am. Right, we all understand that it's the cheating propensity, meaning that we have a tendency to not see things objectively because of the false ego. We have a propensity to make mistakes, to be an illusion. Our senses are limited, and in so many ways. Okay, not that they just like, okay, like if a 2-year-old child looks in the sun and based on the sense perception, then the sun is a circle in the sky 3 inches in diameter. That's what it is. But we know, we're seeing with the eyes of knowledge, no, it's not a circle in the sky 3 inches in diameter. No, it's actually this huge stellar body, a million times bigger than the Earth or whatever it is. So we know that from, well, we can say we know that from the inferential process, because we're seeing through the eyes of science, through the eyes of knowledge. And most of what we know, or we say we know, it's not even that we know because we hear from people we trust and we accept. So that's not just in spiritual. Even we say, okay, do you believe in atoms and electrons and neutrons? So everyone, well, yeah, of course. I mean, since 2nd grade, we're learning about atoms like that. Okay, so how do you know? So you've seen atoms? Because sometimes people say, I only believe what I can see. So we need to understand that's complete nonsense. That's important to understand. Just like, I only believe what I can. Yeah, I'm like a rational person. It's just complete nonsense. Have you ever seen an atom? Well, no. Okay, so my science teacher in 6th grade, Mr. Mazer, he wouldn't lie to me or whatever. We read these books, these scientists. I'm not making fun of that. I mean, we hear from people we trust. Do you believe that Mount Everest exists? We'd all say, well, yeah. Okay, you've seen Mount Everest? No. Well, you just said you only believe what you can see. Well, no, but you can see a document. I saw a PBS documentary. I have a friend. I was at a party once, and I talked to someone who climbed Mount Everest. Okay, so you know someone who you trust, and that's fine. That's how we get knowledge. So especially for knowledge that's beyond the purview of our senses, that's called apurusheya. That's why Savai Pumsam Parodhamaya Toba Dhira Hokshaje. A name for God, a name for Krishna is Hokshaje, means beyond the mind and senses. So God is inconceivable. That doesn't mean we can't understand God. Inconceivable, I'll make a distinction. Inconceivable doesn't mean incomprehensible. It just means that there's an epistemology. There's a way to know God that's beyond the pratyaksha anumana, beyond the methods of direct sense perception, like the sun's a little disk in the sky, or inferential method, material empirical methods. There's spiritual empiricism. That's something else. And just like in Western philosophy, we were studying about Kant, one of his main books, which is quite dense, certainly in the English translation, but probably even in the German, you'd also be like, what's going on here? But whatever. But one of his main books is Critique of Pure Reason. Meaning he had some idea. That reason has its place. It can take us somewhere, and with that. But then there's a limit. And what about that which is beyond the limit, right? And even that which is in the limit, we get it wrong sometimes. It's not perfect, but okay, that was about. So it doesn't mean it's inaccessible. No, it's accessible, but then it's a different process. It's a different process for knowing, and that process that's called bhakti. It's called bhakti. That's an epistemology, a way of knowing. Bhakti mama vijanati yavanyash tasmi tatumam takadodyapa dishate tadanantaram. Krishna says, only by bhakti can I be understood, can I be known. And so, just like in any field, like let's say if we want to learn engineering or physics or math, so a vital part of the process is we find someone who's a master. Oh, and we check their credentials, we check their authority. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, you have your PhD from this university, and here's the author of this book in physics, and here's the degree program, and it's accredited. Okay, I trust. And then we hear from a master. And hearing from a master doesn't mean that now I turn off my brain and I'm just nod my head and blindly accept. Not at all, right? Then the process of learning, discovery, I hear something and go, okay. I trust you, and you say this here and this here, and the book says this. I'm not connecting the dots. Can you help me out here? So the process of question and response, it's vital that we're independently thoughtful in all parts of the process. So here, like this translation purport, it's from His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, a master in self-realization. We use terms like spiritual master, just like there's masters of guitar playing and masters of tennis, and there's masters in spiritual life. It's not a cheap thing. It's not a cheap thing. And so we approach, we hear, Tadviti Pranipatina, Prepashtina Seva, Upadekshanti Tegiman Gyaninas Tatkadarshina. And Bhagavad Gita encourages us that if we really want spiritual truth, just try to learn the truth by approaching a master of spiritual science. There's so many sciences, and of all, the most important science is the spiritual science of self-realization and God-realization. Okay, yeah, and so approach submissively, serve humbly, and inquire. Blindly accepting is not encouraged. It's not a virtue. Also, blind rejection is not a virtue. Yeah, I'm not going to blindly accept. I'll just cynically reject everything, and I'm not even going to think about what you say. But whatever you say, I'll say, yeah. Can you prove it? Stuff like that. Okay, then I'll feel smart. But where's the sincerity for truth? Where's the sincerity for truth? So, to know a subject requires that we have to know a subject means that we have an appropriate means to know the subject, right? To know the subject, right? And so, just like, okay, that if we want to know I want to know what's the temperature. So here's a radio. Let's measure the temperature. Not gonna work. Okay, we don't have the appropriate means. Okay, here's a thermometer. Okay. So similarly, just like, okay, the material empirical method, sometimes it's called objective science. And it is, yeah. Here's some sarcastic chortles there. Okay, so yeah, right. And so in a sense, that sort of method for knowing, it's okay at studying objects, like if I'm studying an inanimate object like a rock. Okay, then that method where the object of study is inferior to the subject, because the researcher is conscious and the object of study is unconscious, inanimate. So then that method can be helpful. Right? Like I can take the rock and I can subject it to heat and cold. I can pour chemicals on it, see how it reacts. But let's say if we're looking at human beings, conscious entities, then those methods, they're far less reliable, right? Because human beings have this bothersome thing called consciousness and free will and self-determination. Darn, gets in the way every time. And that is why fields like psychology, sociology, economics, politics, they're called inexact sciences. Because this free will. Otherwise, if it was all deterministic, mechanistic, reductionistic, then we could predict, oh, okay, yeah, just exactly at this time at 2:32 a.m. there's going to be an attempted murder at this street corner, but we're not able to do that for these. So the method to get to know a human being is I gain your love and trust, and you choose to reveal yourself to me. So does it make sense to serve that supreme conscious entity with the same method that's effective to study inanimate objects? Or does it make some sense that, so that's bhakti. Serving the supreme conscious entity with love and devotion, and then the supreme personality of Godhead is revealed to us in a very personal relation. And so this is, it's described, Bhagavad Gita, 13th chapter, describes 19 elements of the process of knowledge, starting with humility, means like, I'm making it like I got it together, but I'm suffering, I'm struggling, I don't even know who I am. I'm putting up this facade and trying to do this and that, but I'm suffering. I'm suffering from my own mind and body and suffering from others, and I'm just lost here. And Kapanya dosha patam svabhava pichami tvam kamasamuda cheta yatreyasan. He said, Bhuitan Meshishatayam Salimam Tam Prapana. That's Arjuna's situation at the beginning of Bhagavad Gita. He's struggling, he's suffering, he's arguing with Krishna. And at some point he acknowledges, like, okay, now I've lost my composure due to weakness in this condition. Okay, now I'm surrendering to a master. And in Arjuna's case, it was Krishna. In our case, it's the pure devotee of Krishna, Srila Prabhupada. And so that's another element of the process of knowledge. Janma Mritu Jaravya Dukkha Dosha Nidarsha. To realize the inherent misery, the inherent unnaturalness as a bright, radiant, shining spirit soul to be stuck in a body that's subject to be forced into birth, death, old age, disease. And if we develop the consciousness of a tree, then we'll get the body of a tree. Develop the consciousness of a dog, we develop the consciousness of a human in Florida. We can take birth again and human in Florida. And the idea of the process of knowledge is to get that actually to be forced to take birth again, even as a human in Florida, it's not really a great deal. It's not a great deal, yeah. So the idea is, the idea is like the sages, or the true spiritual masters, the authority, they're encouraging us, get serious to get out of this place. I mean, like, okay, we have pure devotees like Jesus or Prabhupada or like that. They might choose to come here for a mission on behalf of God, but that's choosing. That's not being. That's like the example is given. Like, there's the prisoners. Okay, now the governor of the prison, or the warden, or the president. They might choose to visit the prison on a mercy mission, and when they're there, they might even say, like, yeah, they might even go in the cafeteria and take lunch with the inmates, or maybe they'll work with the inmates in the workout yard. It's a mercy mission. And someone who's doesn't have clear vision might think, look, there's the governor in the prison, just like the prisoners, just like same thing. No, it's not the same. There's a big difference. The prisoners are there by force. The governor's choosing to be there, and maybe in half an hour he's going to leave. Okay. And so welfare work, para upakara, I think it was Daru, maybe a week ago, Daru Brahma was making that point. Yeah, okay. Okay, we can support each other. So it's just like, okay, okay. I can arrange that tomorrow for lunch you'll get an extra spoonful of slop. Okay, because I love you. Okay. So or we can arrange an extra 10 minutes in the exercise yard, and or what they do, like, yeah, let's Marty, I can give you some extra cigarettes. The prisoners help each other, and so, but like, okay, sort of like still we're in the prison. An analogy we use, just like we could be rearranging the chairs on the Titanic, making sure on the Titanic the fork's on the left side and the doily is under the, okay. But no, there's this iceberg like right ahead. So the real problems, so real welfare work is like supporting each other in liberation to get out of the prison. That's real work. Otherwise, we can do a little bit, but to get out of the prison, and that means supporting the self to realize I'm not the software, I'm not the hardware, I'm the owner of the computer, and let me use this computer, let me use this vehicle in this process that will turn the self towards itself, and self-realization turn the self towards the supreme in the spirit of loving devotion. Then I'm no longer embarrassed by being a puppet by the complicated web of material energy. And so, okay, so we're giving ourselves here on a Sunday morning. We're giving ourselves here on a Sunday morning to hearing this book called Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam, let's say it's the follow-up book to Bhagavad Gita. And in these transcendental literatures coming from sources that are aparushaya, sources that are not subject to the defects of material senses, then we're understanding the process of how to liberate ourselves from entanglement in matter. And whatever we understand or not cognitively, each word, each syllable, each verse reveals the truth, and it is identical to the truth with it, which it reveals. Meaning, even if we don't understand it, just by exposing ourselves to the vibration, we get transformation of heart. So this verse, this is text 41, Canto 2, Chapter 7, Srimad Bhagavatam. Nantam vidam yahamami munayo grajaste maya balasya purushasya kuto varaye gayan gunan dasha satanana arideva shesho dunapi samavasyati nasya param. Neither I nor all the sages born before you know fully the omnipotent personality of Godhead. So what can others who are born after us know about him? Even the first incarnation of the Lord, namely Shesha, has not been able to reach the limit of such knowledge, although he is describing the qualities of the Lord with 1,000 faces. Hare Krishna. Thanks for your attention and presence. And we'll open it up to comments, realizations, questions. And just so that we all know who's here. Here through internet, there's Daru Brahma, Damayanti, Garuda, Sarah, Narayan, Eze, Ashwani, George, maybe Danielle and Saraswati are also there, Kim, Divakar Karant, Rohini Devi Dasi, and Rukmini Devi Dasi here with me in person in our home ashram here. There's Lakshmi Priya, Ramachandra, Anasuya, Malini, Keith, and myself, David Wolf, Dhira, Govinda Das. Daru Brahma. Daru, you're on mute. Hello, Daryl.
It says Ashwani Verma. What does that mean?
What's that?
What does Ashwani Verma mean?
Oh, I don't know. Ashwani, do you want to respond?
Hi, Ashwani means fire or son of sun.
Okay, fire or son of the sun. Thank you. Thanks for sharing.
Okay, thank you.
Ramachandra.
Yeah, something that I just wanted to highlight that actually after you quoted Bhakti Mala Janati, that the only way to understand Krishna through service, and it's and like the really like logical explanation of like dynamics and like between relationships, how that dynamic it's not possible to understand each other or to speak about God unless we really serve each other, because we're not just like some inanimate objects. I just finding myself in this like process of like trying to do my sadhana and seeing how much mechanical it becomes over time, and missing really the bhakti.
Yeah.
And from how you explain it, it's like brings me back to like the first interaction that I had with Krishna consciousness, that I was like so enthused, and I felt much more in bhakti than I had rigidness in my sadhana.
Yeah.
And now I feel much more rigid in my sadhana than I had with bhakti. And it just kind of brings up this important point that I think we always need that bhakti.
Yeah.
We always need that, regardless of where we are, like sadhana and punctuality.
Thanks for sharing that, Ramachandra. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, that it's ultimately not a mechanical process. And yeah, there are mechanics, there are structures that are there to support us, right? Let's say the other side of it is that kind of, look, I just love Krishna. Like make a vow, a commitment to get up early. Like I just love Krishna, and there could be a few on that platform, but generally that sort of mentality, it's nice, but like even to think of, I just love Krishna with that. No, it's nice, but as far as leading to solid, steady advancement for the conditioned soul, because for the most part, we're in these bodies because we don't just love Krishna. We love some other things. So for the conditioned soul, generally, generally that requires some voluntary austerity, commitment to do things, commitment to do things like maybe rise early and eat only prasadam and study Bhagavatam, that for our mind, and material mind and senses are difficult and feel like jumping into cold water or something like that, cold shower, exactly. And then and then the soul gradually awakens. And at the same time, and I appreciate the point you make, because it's the Niyamagraha principle. Niyamagraha indicates two ways of being, both that are unfavorable to progress in spiritual life. One is to whimsically neglect rules and regulations that will help us, and the other is to mechanically follow without the spirit. And just like I follow these rules and regulations. Okay, am I actually, when I'm training, am I praying to Krishna, please engage me in your service, please support me to see my nonsense and purify my heart? Or am I missing the forest because of the trees? The trees being, I follow this, I follow that, I do this rigidly, but I'm feeling dry inside because the actual essence, the actual enthusiasm is missing. So thanks for highlighting that, Ramachandra. Other questions or comments or realizations? Sarah.
I had a question come up yesterday about the gunas, the three
Gunas.
I was curious. I was thinking about how there's the three modes and how we say, like, for example, sugar could be in the mode of sattva or goodness, but then I could have a consciousness that's like having a tamasic or a rajasic relationship to sugar. So I was curious about the relationship of things themselves being tamasic, rajasic, sattvic, and then my consciousness and the relationship of that.
Thanks for that, Sarah. I appreciate your question. I appreciate the question very much. And yeah, so they're both important. Yeah, they're both important. If we look at Bhagavad Gita really gets into quite some detailed, complex description of the modes, the Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. Bhagavad Gita gets into it. That's starting with chapter 14, especially chapters 14, 17, and 18. And Bhagavad Gita describes about 20 life areas in terms of the three different modes, really four modes, the fourth being fully transcendental, Shuddha Sattva. And it describes about charity in the different modes, austerity, work, happiness in the different modes. And just in the direction of your question, Bhagavad Gita describes, okay, there's the thing or activity itself. That's one consideration. The other consideration, what's our consciousness? What's our consciousness? So they're both vital to consider. Let's, for example, look at, there's a human propensity to give charity, right? Like we have some, like even if someone doesn't have a lot of money, people like to donate, whether it's to a homeless person on the street or here's a nonprofit organization. It's a human propensity to want to give charity. All right, so Bhagavad Gita says, let's look at that in terms of the modes. And so, okay, and so that, because we can give charity to places that are ignorant, tamas, let's say, I'll give charity. And then the person I gave it to uses it to buy crack and sell it at the high school or something. But I'm feeling good because I gave charity. Like, well, that's ignorant. You're not doing good for the world. Okay. And then there's charity in good places. Maybe here's a place that truly helps children or something like that, a hospital or something. Okay, but then there's transcendental charity that's really free from karma, to a kirtan party or to a temple of God that's really used for pure purposes. So there's the external, and that's important to consider. And just as your question points to, then there's the consciousness, right? Because it looks at like, okay, even if you're giving charity to a good place or even a transcendental place, let's say we're giving charity to devotees of God, okay, to this sannyasi, to the bhakti yogis, to the Christian church, or okay, but a place that we're not getting into, but is the temple or church really using the funds? We're not getting into that. So you're really giving it to a good or transcendental place. But let's say my mentality is, these lazy bums, they don't do anything with their life. They just pray all day. Okay, have some money. I guess you need to feed yourself. Okay, so I got this very offensive, resentful, grudging, I'm superior to you, I work for a living, sort of thing. Okay, so then Bhagavad Gita analyzes all that. Like, it's nice that you're giving your charity to a good place rather than to help someone buy cigarettes or something. Okay, that's good. But then your consciousness is tamasic or rajasic. So that's going to be entangling for you. You're not going to get the full effect. right? And similarly, sentiment like, well, maybe my heart's in the right place. I'm just coming from what I call love, this and that. But I'm giving charity to a place where the money will be used for very degraded purposes. But in my, that's like, well, so that's so that's sentimental, and you're actually doing harm to the world. So we can analyze any area of life in that way, and both factors are important, and that's why it's sort of like, you know, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, these are like manuals to help us look at what's my consciousness in doing the good work or the devotional service. What's my consciousness, and how, there's a verse Prabhupada quotes a lot. Shruti Smriti Puranadi Panchracha Vidimvida Akantiki Harer Bhakti Utpatayaiva Kalpate, which says that even if we're doing devotional service, if we're not doing it within the container of the authorized, realized persons and books of knowledge, then even in the name of bhakti, we end up causing disturbance. And that can seem like some abstract concept, but it's not. There's a lot going on in the name of bhakti that's just causing, it's really ruining people's lives in some ways. Thank you, Sarah.
Govinda.
You're coming.
I was just, you say it's ruining people's lives and not simply one life.
Yeah, it could be very severe damage. Not eternal, but very severe. True.
Haribol.
Daru.
Well, I feel Sarah mentioned something about yesterday, and I also meant to say something yesterday, but unfortunately I was muted. And I just wanted to say I really appreciate your. There was the points about Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan, and then then the question came, I think anyhow from Helena about Vishnu, and I just really appreciated the way you answered everything in such a way it made me think of Vedeshu durable but durable. That the Vedas are so extensive that if you just read them, it'll be very difficult to find out the truth. But if you have a devotee like you, we're great bringing in the verse about how Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam. And that's how Prabhupada was very great at just pulling these verses that you would never, find them just on your own, a verse like that. But you can quote them and then show how relevant. Like, where would anyone know about Lord Chaitanya if they didn't come to this movement, or even until they come to this movement, you never hear Lord Chaitanya. It's not in the Bhagavad Gita. And even in the Bhagavatam, it's a rare verse that can be translated to mean that. But I'm just saying, it made me appreciate your expertise as a devotee of the different verses that you quote to tie all this together, because it doesn't seem very hard to put together when you first come. Like, well, it seems like there's a lot of gods you talk about. There's Nasringa, there's Rama, and there's Krishna. You guys are polytheists, huh? No, we're not, but you need a devotee to help explain it. Otherwise, it would seem very weird, So anyhow, I just appreciated your expertise at making this very Vedeshu durable much easier to understand. And it was very wonderful. I meant to comment on that yesterday. That's all. So thank you.
Thank you, Dara Brahma Prabhu. Jai Srila Prabhupada. We can appreciate Srila Prabhupada for being so clear, to light up everything like the sun lights up everything in the daytime. Without Srila Prabhupada's guidance, I'd be a confused mess, and that's an understatement. Probably worse than a confused mess, like that. Well, I mean, hopefully I'd be completely dysfunctional, because without Srila Prabhupada, I might not be dysfunctional. Then I'd mislead others, and so that's why, Srila Prabhupada, he's a servant of Bhagavad Gita. He has no other agenda, simply to present it as it is. That's why that title, Bhagavad Gita, as it is. For some, it seems arrogant. We say, no, it's most humble. I'm not giving my opinion, my agenda. Here's my interpretation. I'm smart, like that. It's just like, as it is. Like, here's Krishna's message. Same with Prabhupada giving the Srimad Bhagavatam. That's why we sometimes say, like, if we talk about Bhagavad Gita, when Prabhupada came to the West in the 60s, there was more than 600 translations of Bhagavad Gita into English and other Western languages. So when we study in our courses, in our classes, why do we study from Bhagavad Gita as it is, given by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada? Is it just your bias? Is it just your prejudice? Maybe. But we can say just factually, historical fact. Well, one thing in our community, we're really into transformation. We just get excited about actual transformation of heart and consciousness. That's just true. And I've been excited about actual transformation since the late 1970s when I'm a teenager. And so if we look historically, although there were hundreds and hundreds of translations and people appreciated it since the maybe late 18th century when the British and Germans went to India, like people appreciated in a scholarly way, but it didn't transform lives. So Prabhupada came with Bhagavad Gita as it is, and within a few years had major impact, transformational impact on hundreds of thousands, maybe millions, tens of millions of lives. It had more transformational impact than all the others combined times 100. Now that's a historical fact. Now someone can say, yeah, but I like this Bhagavad Gita better. Okay, that's a choice. But just as far as if you want transformation, and transformation, we most all know, transformation doesn't mean like it's the most comfortable Bhagavad Gita to read necessarily. Transformation, huge quantum jump, personal growth generally isn't comfortable. And then, so why is that potency there? And that's just because what you're sharing, Dhira Brahman. It's because Prabhupada is representing the conclusion, the Siddhanta. He is Vedanta. He is the topmost Vedic scholar of the modern age. And he has got the bhakti. He's a servant of Krishna. He's a servant of Bhagavad Gita. He has no other agenda. So every word he says has potency to transform the heart. He's giving the conclusion. He's giving the conclusion. And that's why he gives us these key verses to highlight, to see that, yeah, it's not just a mishmash polytheism. No, this is a monotheistic culture and philosophy and theology. One God, and one God has, according to his different relationships, manifests in different names and different forms. So thank you, Dhira Brahman, and just thank you for giving me an opportunity to appreciate my sense of indebtedness to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Bhakta George.
Hare Krishna, David. Thank you so much for class. I'm appreciating the point you made about, in order to make advancement, if someone breaks an agreement with us or behaves in a certain way, to not just go into the illusion of transcendence and say, I'll just chant Hare Krishna, but also like to not go into like the subtle material nature of mind, ego, and intelligence, and like to give in a way that is sattvic, to show up in a way that is and I'm experiencing like how challenging that is to there's like that pitfall, there's the other pitfall to just kind of live consciously, especially in light of an incident that happened to me last week, where in an interview setting within our school, new residents coming in as we were the outgoing seniors. I was asked what I do in my free time, and I shared, I was asked a couple of times what I do outside of school. And I shared that, I chant Hare Krishna, I have a, nice devotional community. We eat prasadam, and I explained that was devotional, like devotional food that we offer. And we go on kirtan, which is, I explained what kirtan was just briefly, singing and dancing, glorifying the Lord through music and song. And I received a message from another classmate who was not in the interview room with me, saying that they asked me that it would be better if I kept details of religious matters outside of the interview, and that I was essentially being inappropriate and unprofessionally representing the University of Florida by mentioning God. And so I'm really just being in my process as far as how I pursue this in a way that is in line with life purpose, that I can share my experience, communicate it, and also kind of choose what I have in regards to, because it was easy for me to say, well, whatever, let me just chant Hare Krishna, like it's their karma if they're, trying to censor me or whatever. But the truth is that the feelings I'm experiencing, I'm not pleased as far as the context of what's being said and also how it was handled, meaning like the people that were in the interview room with me, had to go to a third source that was not privy to what was happening to send me like a roundabout text message. So there's many aspects of that are not fine. And so I'm appreciating you stating that, living consciously, making advancement, like this is happening. Krishna and I are co-creating this for a reason. So if I don't take practical responsibility for this situation that I have of these people, I think it's going to keep coming up over and over until Krishna is like, yeah, you got it. Like, okay, like how to show up in all those sattvic qualities, whether it was a religious matter or which I think is interesting because it's such like a blatant kind of yeah, it's like so obvious, that it could have been a different issue or something, but it's specifically a matter of me saying Krishna's name, mentioning kirtan. At the same time that I sit there and hear my co-residents talk about how they grill and smoke that animal flesh for consumption every weekend, over and over as they're saying what they do in their free time. It's like, it's interesting to me that, because it's not even a request. It's like it would be better. It was phrased as in like, and I'm thinking like it would be better for whom, if I censor what I do in my free time. So anyway, yeah, I just wanted to share my appreciation of you saying that, not to go into that trap of illusion of transcendence, and also not to go into this false ego of like, well, they should respect me and they shouldn't go behind my back and they shouldn't, like whatever, it's like all the shoulds to keep them out of it and to approach the situation in a way that that I can actually maybe set boundaries or whatever the process we have to create like a life promoting situation that brings me closer to God. Yeah.
Thank you, George. I appreciate your sharing. I appreciate your personal sharing. And what I'm hearing is you're in introspection. You had an experience in your professional environment. You shared something in an interview, group experience. And I heard you're moved and touched. You moved to discovery in the part about, spiritual bypass. And you're looking, you're in discovery. Because you don't want to withhold and need to censor yourself. At the same time, you do want to be sattvic, intelligent, and share yourself truthfully. That really connects with time, circumstance, person, group. It's not with Srila Prabhupada. He has many letters where he writes to disciples. He goes, really the highest development of your Krishna consciousness is when you're able to share these principles, these universal principles in a way where anyone will respond in a favorable way, which means we're attuned, we're empathic to whether are we talking to a group of 10-year-olds, a group of university professors, a friend, someone from the yoga center, that we're so deep in the principles that we know how to share in a way that will connect. And in the name of time and circumstance, that we don't want to like hide ourselves and our truths. I'm reminded of there's a morning walk, maybe more than one, but one morning walk particularly. And like, so Prabhupada they were doing a japa and talking and, listening to Prabhupada. And there was maybe a jogger in the 70s. There was lots of joggers. So there's like a jogger running by and someone, I think it's in the USA. And And Prabhupada greeted him with good morning. And then a little down the road, one of Prabhupada's students said, well, how come you said good morning instead of Hare Krishna? Now, I don't even know what Prabhupada's response was. Maybe he didn't respond, because it's obvious that Prabhupada had realization from Krishna that this person's self-realization and sattvic living, this person's path is going to be served better by good morning rather than Hare Krishna. Right, so that's different than, oh, I want to hide that I'm a Hare Krishna or something like that. It's not like about wanting to hide. And I'm hearing Dhira. I'm even hearing Dhira. You don't have a conclusion about what you did or didn't do, but you're in discovery, and I appreciate you're conscious. You don't want to just go to pointing the fingers, and you're aware. You're honoring your perceptions at the same time. You're simultaneously looking internally to how you can use this exchange to become a more conscious person and a more effective representative of Srila Prabhupada.
Yes, thank you, David. I really appreciate that reflection. And something's coming up from me that Sarah actually shared with me once. And like the idea of keeping in mind what my intention is for the relationship. And I am proud of myself in regard to that. Whereas in the past, I've gone into more of like an, ego, like aggression kind of mode of like, oh, like, who are you to like tell me, like what to, and like this time I just was like, at least I had a moment of pause to be in that mood of response. So often I feel like I have to rush it, like I have to be intelligent enough to know in the moment what to say. But it was nice to at least not behave angrily and just say, I will carefully consider, what you are saying. So even though I wasn't thinking like, what is my intention for this relationship in the moment where they're like, check your text message and whatever, going into the whole drama of it, at least I think, some presence of mind to say, I will carefully consider, it's not my intention to disturb people, I said, and I will carefully consider. So I feel like I'm feeling a little hopeful in that, and I'm feeling appreciative of Sarah and thinking about what I want to create for this relationship, and of your reflection about, how to meet people where they're at, and really be humble, and like you were saying yesterday, not true humility being like detachment. Like freedom is actually freedom from that. So thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, George. Hare Krishna. Between stimulus and response, there's a moment of choice, and you're conscious. You're experiencing yourself as more conscious in that moment of choice. I don't need to just reactively criticize or become fearful. I have a million choices in this moment. And I appreciate the theme here. It's like, this conscious sattvic response. It's hard. I mean, for conditioned souls. Let's not even speak of trans. I mean, like the spiritual bypass, that can be pretty easy. It's like, to just stand Hare Krishna, this is God's plan. And to just, let's say, out of fear, not say anything, that could be pretty easy. It's the path of least resistance. I hope everyone likes me. Or like sattvic, we call it assertive sattvic communication. It's true, it's honest. Right? So and sometimes speaking the truth, that can be hard, but sometimes that can be easy. But really, really true sattvic communication, it's not just true and honest. It's true, honest, and it's communicating in a way that's really beneficial for everyone. It's like, I need to speak the truth and actually be sincere that everyone will benefit from it. Oh my God, because mode of passion, well, here's the truth in your face. I'm just telling it like it is. That's honesty. Well, okay, but maybe I'm causing more harm than good. So truly sattvic communication, it's not like fear-based insecurity. I better not say anything. I communicate the truth in a way where I have 100% clear intention that even though what I'm saying might not be pleasant, might not be comfortable for me or others, my intention is truly to be uplifting, consciousness raising for for the enduring welfare of everyone. And I know for myself, that requires going deep. Again, it can be easy, I'll just not say anything, I'm too scared, or to just blurt it out, the truth, but to really say the truth in a way that I'm caring. Yeah, so to live these Sattvic principles, it requires conscious effort for the conditioned soul.
That reminds me. So I chose to buzz cut my hair for initiation, and I did it literally like 12 hours before the ceremony.
It was pretty
It was
spontaneous.
pretty spontaneous, and I didn't even think about it because I was just doing it for Prabhupada. And I had to wake up the next morning and I went, oh, I'm going to work. I'm going to see people today. And what am I going to say? And it was just a moment of hesitation and fear. But then once I was there, it was more natural, and it just felt like that's what I'm doing right now. I'm serving the Prabhupada. And if someone's showing concern, which that was the first response, like they think I have cancer or there's something medically going on with me. And so it was really joyous to say, no, I was at my initiation.
You took it as an opportunity to share.
Yeah. And so then it was either like really people were interested or they were just like, okay. And so it was, but it was nothing like, whoa, like, what did you just tell me? Or what did Anasui just tell me? And so then like the very next couple days later was at my dentist. And so the dental hygienist said the same thing. And so it was like all the people I wasn't expecting to see in the next couple of days that were like really noticed, even though I wore short hair before, it was really noticeable.
Yes.
And so, so I was just having a lot of fun with it. It was kind of like, okay, this is cool. Someone's noticing me. I get an opportunity to talk about Prabhupada. And I get to say I've been doing bhakti yoga for over 5 years, and I decided to make a commitment to my spiritual master. And it was just really fun. And so, and then some choose to call me Anasuya, some choose to call me Anna. So I gave them a preference of whatever they feel comfortable with. And so it's just, so I really appreciate, George, that you were being true to yourself. And I feel like it's just your time and circumstances, your Govinda said, when it's a joyful exchange and sharing your relationship with the Lord. So I just wanted to share my experience of a couple months ago. Yeah.
Thank you, Anasuya. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
And your sharing is so appealing. It's so attractive. It's not like, well, I shouldn't share. I should share. It's just because I imagine for those in your office, your agency, that just because you're not attached, and it's not about you want to get them to, or you're afraid. You had this playful, childlike manner, and it's very appealing.
Yeah.
It's very
And
appealing.
it probably caused card with my name, your beautiful calligraphy. And so they were like, what's, we'll say that name again. It's like, look at this beautiful card I got, and it has my name on it. So that's on my desk. And so also when I get to offer my food at work, I had a Prabhupada there with me. And so yeah, so it's just made it really open and exciting and joyful.
Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you everyone for your association. Hare Krishna. Haribol.